Going live. We have now started. This is our second broadcast for English 3950, and this week we've read, since the last Hangout, we've read Esperanza Rising and Pictures of Hollis Woods. And I was going to start by just asking what y'all thought about either one or both of the books. Did you like the readings, and if so, why?
I guess I'll go first. I really liked the Esperanza Rising. I've actually read it before. I read it back in I don't even remember. It might have been middle or high school. But I liked how it just gave you the Mexican American perspective on immigrating into America.
Cool. So you remembered reading this as a younger person,
Yes, I do.
and you liked it the first time you read it?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was very interesting.
This happens a lot of times with, like, when I teach the Chronicles of Narnia, or if I do a Harry Potter book. But I haven't yet run into the experience of many of the students read, mostly because I used to do a lot of really new stuff.
Yeah.
And this time I didn't only do new stuff, so a lot of the books some of you would have been young people when they were out. So. What about you, Paul?
Oh, go ahead.
I hadn't read any of them before, so it was the first time for me reading both of them. But I really liked both of them. I liked Esperanza Rising, and I liked Pictures of Hollis Woods.
Anything in particular about them that caught your eye?
I like the changes. Well, it seems like the main characters in both of the books went through a lot of changing throughout from the beginning to the end of the story. And with Esperanza, I liked how she kind of started off kind of a spoiled little princess in a way, and then she kind of got a harsh dose of reality, and she really matured and changed by the end of the novel and realized, what was really important versus material things like she kind of was used to.
Yeah.
So, with the Hollis Woods, I liked how she, found a family at the end and was happy and realized she could be loved and things like that.
To me, well, I guess so far we've really read 3 novels. I don't know that I intended it to be this way, but we've read 3 novels that are focused on young girls' experiences. So while Peter Pan's called Peter Pan, one of the things we talked about in that discussion was that it really is Wendy's story. I mean, she's the character who has the change. So really all 3 of these young women or girls start in one place and they go somewhere else. And I think one of the things about Esperanza Rising that is I think pretty relatable to us as adults is we think that of young children, one of the ways we characterize young children is that they're spoiled, right? Or that they can be spoiled. They think the world owes them something, or the world's fair, and a lot of times they have a really charmed experience, and then something awful happens. And this is the case for Esperanza, is that she, her world crumbles. It's very much a princess to pauper kind of story, as opposed to the other way around. She starts out with money and a secure family and a mother and a father and land, and then she sees all that disappear, and then she ends up in a foreign country where she's read as somehow less than others, and she's used to being at the top of the social hierarchy, and whereas Hollis Woods is not used to being at the top of any social hierarchy. She starts out very low, and in some ways through her own acts and through the action of the story, she's kind of raised up, and something better happens for her. I think, which is really one of the nice things about how both of the novels sort of show a young girl's experience or growth. Growth happens in many, many different ways.
Yeah, I liked in how Hollis Woods they showed, because I guess you don't really get to. I never read a book where it was like a first-hand experience of like being a foster child. So I thought it was interesting how they portrayed her character and how she grew and kind of beat her inner demons, I guess. Because she could give love, but she couldn't accept it. The book, she could do that, which I just found interesting because you got to saw her grow over the book.
I got a couple of folks who are trying to watch live, so let me see if I can get them in here. I'm trying to. This is the joy of doing new things. And then they don't necessarily work out. So I guess I'm curious for the two of you, what were some of the since we're just really wrapping up Hollis Woods, what are some of the things that you found most moving about that novel, or most interesting about it?
Which one?
Hollis Woods.
I found that.
Okay, sorry, you're cutting out. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You want to go first, Catherine, or did you want me to go?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, let me think. I think that I found it interesting that, kind of like you said, number one, also I agree with Catherine. I've never really read a book before about a child that's been in a foster care system. So that was a first for me. It just touched me, honestly, when I read the book and just saw how she felt unloved and unwanted and almost like she wasn't worthy of love. So when she did find a family that could actually love her, you know, she almost didn't even know how to accept it because she was so used to feeling like she wasn't, you know, deserving of love. And another thing I found interesting was kind of like, hold on, I got somebody coming in.
Hi. Sorry, me and Emily and another girl and Rachel were just in the wrong hangout. The three of us are in it together, but we're trying to join this one now.
So y'all were just in there doing your own thing. You didn't.
We were like, where's everyone at? We were like, where's the teacher? Where are the other people? And then I looked on and I saw where you were doing one live, and then we all decided we got off that one, and I think they're about to join this one too.
Awesome. Oh, there's Rachel.
Yeah, there's Rachel. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There we go, Rachel. I don't know how that happened. And there's Emily.
Well, when I started doing it earlier,
I think I clicked the first link you sent, not the second one.
Yeah, we clicked those wrong ones.
Well, I got worried it wasn't going to work, so I clicked the share button again. When I got a different link, I thought, oh no, this is all going to work out different. So one of the things we noticed is it probably works well when you're not talking if you hit your mute button at the top, because even if you just like click your keyboard, it'll switch the microphone to you and take the attention. So you just have to remember to unmute your microphone when you talk or whatever. So we had just gotten started. We were talking about pictures of Hollis Wood and what most interested us. And Nicole, one of the things I think you'll notice when you move your mouse over the different people at the bottom, their name pops up. So that's really convenient since we're just meeting each other. Nicole was saying it was the first book she'd read about a foster care situation. So that was really interesting. And Catherine was about to say something. So Catherine, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was very interesting the relationship that Hollis and Josie had. I think that in a way they helped each other, but more so Hollis. She kind of took over the caregiver position because of her dementia, and by doing that, I think she kind of learned to give love, and the love that Josie gave her back was just kind of unconditional, and they just had a mutual understanding with each other. They loved to do the kind of same things, doing artwork and going to see movies with each other. So I think that they both kind of helped each other in that way, which I found just interesting.
I unmuted the mic and then muted again. You see, I think there are a lot of examples of picture books that I can think of, particularly several by Patricia Polacco and Tommy DePaola, that show these young people, very young people, doing things with older people. But when you get into chapter books, that seems rarer and rarer. It tends to be young people hang out with young people, and the tension of the novel, the action of the novel, is either about romance or the beginning of an awareness of the opposite sex or the same sex, or it's some kind of family conflict, but it tends to be something around people the same age. So one of the things I've really liked about the book is that you do get this relationship between a young person and an older person and sort of how they help each other out, and it becomes a really interesting thing. Yeah, Emily?
Do you think that could be because when children are younger, they do kind of want that attachment with an older person, to feel safe. And then as they move into their early teens, they get that independence drive and they want to be away from their parents and away from people who are going to tell them what to do.
Yeah, I think that makes plenty of sense for why that might be. That there is a sort of safety or comfort that goes along, and then wanting to be more not connected to old people.
I thought this was really interesting to see because I think for Hollis, since she never really had that connection with a family member, she didn't have that drive to like get away or to branch out and be rebellious. With Josie, she kind of just desired that relationship because she hadn't really had it in the past and she hadn't really made that connection with any of the other families she'd been in. And I also thought it was really interesting to remember how young Hollis was in this book. I think she was like 11 or 12, and the whole time whenever I was reading it, it just didn't seem like she was at that young of an age. I felt like she was like a lot older than the way that she portrayed herself and the decisions that she made and the things that she said throughout the book.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We talked. One of the questions about that book that was for discussion was about abandonment issues and about the experience of the security that comes with family. And I think when I mentioned in one of the early lectures the pattern of home away home, part of what makes that pattern so exciting for a young reader and also threatening, like Wendy going away to Neverland was both exciting. This is this really cool thing. But it's also Neverland was full of darkness and there were scary things, and Tinkerbell was kind of an asshole to her, and like there were pirates, and so there's also scary things. But part of what makes that work is that children, if they have a sense that home is there, right? They know home's going to be able to. That was Peter Pan's real anxiety. He went back and he'd been replaced. Home wasn't a secure place, and so that home away home pattern really works. Because the character thinks, if I leave and go away and do something else, I can always go back. And in some ways, that's really not that much different, probably, from the experience of going off to college for some of you. I mean, there's like, okay, freshman year is going to be tough. It's going to be really exciting. But in the end, I can go home, or if I have a bad weekend, maybe I can go home. The idea that home is someplace safe and secure, but for Hollis, that's not it. So that need that Emily pointed out to rebel against or to only hang out with friends and rebel against old people or just not connect to them. I think you're right. It's really different for Hollis because she's not had that thing. She's not got that thing to rebel against or to distance herself from in order to make her own identity. She's never had that secure home. She's really looking for it. Yeah, Nicole?
I think another thing why she connected with Josie was like for once she felt needed, because it seems like in her other homes, they just automatically consider her a troublemaker and probably didn't really want her around, or she didn't feel like they really wanted her around. But when she finally met Josie, she almost was saying she was ready to leave or run away again until she realized that Josie actually needed her. So really that was her only reason of sticking around. At first,
So I'm trying to think about, like, is the moment in the novel where it becomes clear that Josie needs her. Do you remember what that moment was? Clear for us, but also clear for Hollis.
I feel like one of that moment would be whenever they were at the pier, that first time when the mustard woman came, whenever Hollis picked up the shell and Josie said, "Take this for luck." And then she looked back. I just felt like there was a lot of confusion because that's whenever Josie was confused. Like whenever the mustard woman asked, "Why aren't you in school?" Josie said, "School?" ? Like confused. And then she realized that. And I think that was just like a moment when Hollis was like, okay, if I don't do something different, I'm going to get taken away from Josie and she needs me. I think that was like a moment whenever she really realized that not only did she need Josie, but Josie needed her also.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing, like that it was that Josie was able to forget something as big as school was like the moment whenever Hollis like really realized how much she did need her.
There was also a moment where, oh, am I, okay. I think there was also a moment where Hollis actually says she doesn't tell the mustard woman, but, you know, Josie forgets a lot of things. That's kind of when I clued in, at least. I might have been a bit late in cluing in, but.
So let's relate this then back to Esperanza Rising. There is that moment, right, where whether it's fair or unfair, right, so that we have these beliefs about childhood, that children should be innocent and happy, and Peter Pan says they should all be innocent and heartless and gay and playful or whatever. But we all have to grow up. And so it's interesting here because for Hollis, part of growing up is taking responsibility for another person. In this case, it's not a little brother or sister. It's not, you know, and that for some of us, that's the case. Like we say, okay, I have to look after my little sister, my little brother. She looks after someone older. What is it? I mean, for Hollis, Esperanza has the same experience, right? She does things that begin to mark her as taking responsibility. What were some of those that struck you when you were reading Esperanza?
I think it was really whenever her mother became sick. I feel like that's whenever it became super clear to Esperanza that she didn't have the same life that she had had in Mexico. Like, now it was up to her to make big decisions and to fight for the life that she wanted and that she needed and to help her mother and to do everything that she could. Sorry, wait 1 second. Okay, to do everything that she could to make a better life for herself and for her mom, because at this point she's lost her father, she's lost her home, she can't trust her uncles. The only people that she has are Horentia, whatever her name was, the servant, the family that lived with them, and that's basically all that she has. And so it's like a fight for life now to survive for her and to survive for her mother and to make money and do whatever she can. I feel like she grew a lot whenever her mother got sick. That's whenever it was like a really real for her, and that she realized it was time for her to change as a person and to grow up a lot.
Yeah, the point in the book when I saw a big difference in Esperanza was when her and her friend were in her house, and she said that she wanted her to tell her stories of her when she was rich, if she would teach her how to do like household chores. And that was the first point where I saw her actually like willing and wanting to do and contribute to her family and helping raise money. But then when her mother got sick, it's when like I feel like it escalated, and she knew that's like what she needed to be doing in order to help her family.
I think she was also driven in wanting to send for her grandmother, because I guess with the connection that she knew that her grandmother and her mother had, you know, that also became a driving force in her working and making money, was to send for her grandmother as well. She felt that would help her mother get well.
It's interesting that the mother being sick. One of the things I don't think we've talked much about, but I'm sure you're familiar with, just from, I mean, as soon as I say it, you'll go, oh yeah, obviously. But when you think about all the fairy tales that you probably read or were read as children, yeah, so often the mother is gone, right? So the big thing with Cinderella is the evil stepmother, and this sort of figure of the mother who's been replaced by this other mother who is awful. If any of you have read Neil Gaiman's book Coraline or seen the movie, it's this very creepy sort of tale of the other mother, and that other mother is really scary. The idea that this mother might replace your mother, the person who gave you birth and nurtured you and was so wonderful. There's a funny teen novel called No More Dead Mothers that's really about that experience of reading all these books about young women, and part of what launches them into adulthood is that their mom dies in the book. So there's a whole series of books where the mom gets cancer, and they're these sort of real life stories, and that is a real thing. I don't want to just miss that. Mothers and fathers, you know, get cancer and they get illnesses, and nothing happens. But that's a major trope in children's and young adult fiction, in part because if you had to think, like, what's the most traumatic event a child would experience, it's probably going to be the loss of a parent. The loss of a sibling is traumatic. The loss of a grandparent is traumatic, but not usually the way that a parent is. And so I think in Esperanza Rising, we don't have to lose the mother, but that sickness, as you pointed out, is a real launching point for Esperanza saying, well, this is where I have to kind of step into my mother's shoes and do the kinds of things she did. And then part of the ways in which she, I think, evaluates herself or determines if she's done a good job, if she's a good person, is have I done things well, like my mother would have done them, right? And so I think that's probably, I think, a common experience for boys and girls alike, wondering, have I made my father proud? Have I made my mother proud? Have I done the things that they would like? And so I think you'll see that pattern in a good many children's stories. And of course, the next book we're going to read, A Monster Calls, this is one of the major issues, is that the mother in the book is sick, and Connor has to really think about, you know, what does this mean for me? What's it going to mean? And in that case, we learn not very far into the novel, most of you have probably already started it, that Connor's father is not around. So his parents are divorced, and now the mother, the person he stays with, is sick. So you're seeing again that metaphor, that motif in young adult fiction, where what happens to the young person is the directly relationship to what is the big trauma or event that happens. And then fiction written for adults by adults, literary fiction, or a John Grisham thriller, it's usually not a parent, right? It's often a spouse or a partner, or something at work. So when you think about, like, what's been the motivation that causes all the action to happen, it tends to be in young people's fiction some problem with a family member, because that's what a young reader could most identify with. I mean, this is the whole point of Harry Potter, right? Is that as a baby he survived and his parents didn't. I'm sorry if I've ruined that for those of you who haven't read Harry Potter, if such a person could still be alive. But like that's huge. That's a major part of it. I think we'll see that a few more times. I turned on the Q&A, and I'm really not sure how to say. I think Shahine, I don't know, Jones, was asking if you preferred Esperanza Rising or Hollis Woods.
I preferred Hollis Woods just because I've never read a book quite like it before, and it just, like I said, gave me a better perspective on what it is to be a foster child, and just that internal struggle they go through to feel a place of belonging and feeling wanted because they're getting bounced around all the time. So that's just kind of why I preferred it. And I've read Esperanza Rising before, so.
For me, I
I
personally...
think mine's...
You can go, Rachel. You're good.
Okay. I was going to say, for me, it's kind of the opposite. My parents adopted 2 kids, so, like, I've had a lot of experience, like, with foster care. And I actually read that book whenever I was, like, younger, whenever we were adopting. But Esperanza Rising was, like, a very different, like, thing for me. Workers and things like that. So it was just newer for me.
Yeah, for me, I agree. I preferred Esperanza Rising just because that was such a different perspective, to see a girl who had gone from being so wealthy to literally having nothing, having no father, having a mother who was sick, who she couldn't be around for so long, and also to see it as a minority in America, I guess, to see the perspective of what it was like to be a Mexican American as opposed to just being raised in America, for her to not know English and that to be a barrier, and her to see some of the other people on the farm that she was on who knew English. So it was just, for me, I really liked that because it was something that I'd never really connected with before. But after reading that book and hearing the perspective of another girl who was younger, it just like opened my eyes a lot to the ways of the world, and how I feel like growing up the way that I did, I've been sheltered to a lot of the things that other people aren't. And so it was just really interesting to hear about that and hear about the different struggles that people face whenever you are born in a different family or to a different race or whatever.
I also prefer Esperanza Rising just because I feel like I learned a lot from that book. Also, me being an African American, I know a lot about civil rights and, blacks fighting for their rights, but this kind of gave me a different perspective on immigration and, how they were. I just didn't really think about it before how immigrants, like during the book, they had strikes while they were fighting for better wages and better living conditions as well. So it just gave me a lot of new information and kind of looked at civil rights from a different point of view. So I really like Esperanza Rising.
I think one of the things that in that book, as I said when I opened the discussion question, I think my heart in some ways is always really pulled by Hollis Woods because of my own experiences. But one of the things I thought was really interesting about Esperanza Rising is that you see the folks from Oklahoma who had gone out to California because of the Dust Bowl, right? They could no longer make a living farming in Oklahoma, and now the Okies, right, are fighting for recognition against these folks, the Mexican American or Mexican immigrants who are trying to make a life, and they both are kind of putting each other down and are frustrated with each other. And it was a really interesting to me look because I hadn't thought quite about the Dust Bowl experience or that experience of what early sort of Western orients. I mean, because the Oklahoma was still be sort of settler community at the end of the 19th century. What that would have been like, those differences. So to me, that was a really interesting part of that novel as well, sort of what Nicole was talking about. So we're at 9:29, and I promised that these would be 30 minutes, and I wanted to keep you. It looked like we lost Emily there. I hope her. Just a simple internet issue. Any questions that the four of you who are still here have had or have about the course or about anything else while you've got me on the line for a couple of minutes?
I don't have any questions, but I will say that I really like how the course is laid out. The books we were talking, me and Rachel and Emily were talking about this in the other one, how you've chosen books that are really interesting and really relatable and that have been good reads. They haven't felt like you're just reading for a class or like reading a textbook. So I've enjoyed all the books that we've had the opportunity to read so far.
Awesome. Thank you. I do love a compliment.
Yeah, I have to agree. I love how the class is laid out. It's simple to do because my other online class is not like this at all, and it's hard to navigate. So I appreciate how easy it is to just navigate around it.
I worry because when I don't use Blackboard, I know some people had some confusions around things early on, so I appreciate hearing that as well. And I hope that I'm able to respond by email when you're having problems. It just strikes me that a summer class in 5 weeks, you just can't do everything you can do in a 15-week class. And I have some colleagues who try to cram 15 weeks into 5, and I could not do that work. I think as a teacher, I would be overwhelmed. So I can imagine what it would be like to be a student and try and get all that done. So I think for me, it was about really looking at what are the goals of this kind of course, and when I teach it 15 weeks, when I teach it in the summer, what are the goals? How do I meet them? And I think it's a lot of reading. You're reading 2 books a week for the most part, but they are kids' books. So, I hope the sort of flexibility of having 2 days to chat about it online, let slower readers get in there, and quick reader, so working at your own pace. I hope that's working out for folks. But definitely, if you have any questions or any problems coming up, send me an email, and I'll do my best to answer it as quickly as possible and get back to you. I'm done traveling now until after class is over, so you have much more of my undivided attention than you had a week ago. Any other question before I let you all go? All right, sounds great. Well, thank you all. I had a great time. It was lovely meeting you, putting faces and names together, and learning that you're Nicole. That's wonderful. So it's always, that's one of my first things in class is, do you go by your first name, your middle name, do you go by a name I have not got on my sheet at all, which is useful to do. It's been a joy hanging out with you this week, and I hope that you enjoy a Monster Calls that we'll start talking about Thursday and Friday. So y'all have a good week, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.